Good morning, students. Today I would like to explain two cavity klystron ampilfer structure and working. So this figure shows the two cavity klystron amplifier. Klystron amplifier is basically a vacuum tube. In this, two cavities, namely input cavity and output cavities, are used. So here electron gun, which is connected to the negative voltage with respect to anode. The space between the input cavity and output cavity is called drift space. This is the focusing electrode. RF input is applied to the input cavity and output is collected from the RF output is collected from the output cavity. So initially, by applying the negative voltage to the electron gun, which emits the electrons, once these electrons reaches the gap A, that is the input gap, here the velocity modulation takes place. That means the velocity of the electrons changes in accordance with the RF input signal given to the input cavity. As a result, what happened? All these electrons simultaneously reach to the output cavity, so that electron bunches are formed at the gap at the output cavity. Because of this velocity modulation process causes the electron beam density also changes. This density is cyclically varied with the time. As a result, more amount of RF output is delivered. RF output is delivered in the output cavity. This is the basic explanation of a two cavity klystron amplifier. How velocity modulation takes place is explained with the help of Applegate diagram. Now coming to the Applegate diagram, here the RF input signal is applied to the input cavity. So assume this is the position of the gap A, position of the gap A. Assume this is the position of the gap B. That means output cavity gap. Position of gap B. That means position at output cavity. This is the RF input signal is applied to the input cavity. Initially here there are three electrons. So namely early electron and reference electron and late electron. So RF input, positive RF input is influences on the early electron. As a result, early electron velocity is decreases. So it reaches slowly to the output gap. Here input signal is 0. That means there is no influence of RF input on the reference electron. So this reference electron does not go to any velocity modulation. So it normally travels with normal velocity. It travels with normal velocity. So here the negative cycle causes late electron receives repulsive force. As a result, the velocity of the late electron is very high. It reaches with faster velocity. It travels with faster velocity. All these electrons reaches simultaneously. So finally, the velocity of the late electron is greater than the reference electron, and velocity of the reference electron is greater than the early electron. Similarly, time taken by the late electron is very less compared to reference electron and early electron. From the fundamentals of physics, we know that distance is equal to velocity into time. If velocity, time is equal to distance by velocity, velocity increases, obviously what happens?